Sarah Calloway Brennan moves through the 37th floor at 7:14 a.m., 46 minutes before anyone else arrives. She does this every day. She has done this every day for 10 years. The Manhattan skyline bleeds gold through floor-to-ceiling windows behind her. She carries 2 tablets, a leather portfolio, and a coffee she made herself because the executive assistant, who was supposed to handle that, called in sick again. And Sarah has never once let a small failure become anyone else's problem. She pauses at the long mahogany conference table in the main boardroom, runs one finger along the edge, checking, not for dust, for readiness. There's a difference. Today is the Hartwell Capital presentation. $200 million in potential investment. 18 months of preparation. 83 slides that Sarah built, restructured, rebuilt, and restructured again at Mark's direction. Direction that mostly came in the form of, "This doesn't feel right," and "Make it more impressive," and her personal favorite, "You know what I mean, just fix it." She always knew what he meant. That was the problem. Sarah, to herself, quietly, touching the presentation binder. Everything in place, like always. She sits down at the head of the table, not because it's her seat, it isn't. It will never officially be her seat. But because from here, she can see every angle of the room, every weak point, every place where today could go sideways. Her phone buzzes. The screen reads, "Mark, calling." She answers on the second ring, not the first. She learned years ago that answering on the first ring made him feel like he owned her time completely. 2 rings was the smallest boundary she had left. "Sarah, good morning." Mark, through phone, distracted, the sound of a car behind him. "Is everything set up?" Sarah, boardroom is ready. Catering confirmed for 9:30. I've printed individualized portfolio packets for each investor rep, tabbed by the sections most relevant to their specific fund priorities. Holloway's packet leads with the residential heritage properties, because that's where his sentiment lives. Wells leads with projected ROI on the Meridian Tower development, because that's all he actually cares about. "Mark, what about the waterfront slides?" I said I wanted the waterfront slides moved up. "Sarah, they're now slide 4, right after the company overview, before the financial projections. It opens on the aerial rendering, the one with the sunset lighting that your father commissioned before he..." She stops. A half-breath pause, almost imperceptible. "Sarah, the one with the sunset lighting. It's a strong visual entry point." Mark, "Fine, good." Pause. "Victoria's going to be presenting the marketing segment today." A beat of silence. "Sarah Victoria Chase is presenting." Mark, "She's been leading the rebrand strategy. It makes sense for her to speak to it." Sarah, "I wrote the rebrand strategy." Mark, "And she's been executing it." There's a difference between writing something and owning it in the room, Sarah. You know how you get in front of crowds. She doesn't get nervous in front of crowds. She never has. He knows that, but she doesn't say it. She writes something in her portfolio instead. A small, precise note to herself. Sarah understood. "I'll brief her on the talking points before 9. Mark, "She already has them. I sent them last night." Sarah, "You sent her my talking points last night." Mark, "Our talking points. Don't be possessive about it. Already moving on. I need you to handle the Caldwell contract amendment before noon. And remind Diane to have the Q3 actuals ready in hard copy, not just the digital deck. Wells people are old school." Sarah, I already asked Diane yesterday. The hard copies are printed and on your chair. A pause. Mark doesn't thank her for that. He hasn't thanked her for anything in a long time. Mark. Okay, good. I'll be there by 8:30. He hangs up. Sarah looks at the phone for exactly 3 seconds. Then she puts it face down on the table, opens her portfolio, and goes back to work. This is what 10 years looks like. Not a marriage, not a partnership. A woman making everything work for a man who has long since stopped noticing that things could fall apart without her. She notices, though. She always notices. Raymond Holloway arrives at 8:05, the first board member through the door, which is also something he has done for 20 years. He is the kind of man who shows up early, not to impress anyone, but because he genuinely respects the rooms he walks into. He stops when he sees Sarah arranging the final portfolio packets. Holloway. Sarah. You look tired, Sarah. A small, real smile, the only kind she gives Holloway. I look exactly how I always look, Raymond. Holloway. That's what concerns me. He sets his briefcase down, looks around the boardroom with the careful eyes of someone taking inventory of something he loves. Holloway. Harold used to say this room felt different when you were in it. Said it felt like someone actually cared. Sarah's hands pause for just a moment on the stack of portfolios. Sarah. How are you holding up? Since the funeral. Holloway. Quietly. It was 3 weeks ago, and it already feels like longer. He was a good man. Better than most people in this building ever gave him credit for. Sarah. I know. Holloway. He knew it too. About you, I mean. He told me once, about 2 years ago actually. He said, Raymond, if this company survives me, it will be because of Sarah. Not Mark. Not the board. You. Sarah looks at him. Something moves behind her eyes. Not sentiment exactly. Something more layered than that. Recognition, maybe. Of a truth she has been carrying alone. Sarah. He was generous. Holloway. He was accurate. There's a difference. Beat. Holloway. Are you all right? Today specifically. Something feels. Sarah. Today is going to be a very important day. I'm focused on that. Holloway studies her a moment longer, then nods. He has known her long enough to recognize when a door is gently but firmly closed. Mark arrives at 8:47, not 8:30 as he said. This is also routine. He walks in like the building is applauding him. Victoria Chase is 2 steps behind him, wearing a dress that costs what Sarah makes in a week, and carrying a tablet with Sarah's slides on it. Mark, scanning the room, nodding. Good. This looks good. He does not say it to Sarah. He says it to the air. Victoria, to Sarah, with a smile that is technically pleasant. Can you make sure there's still room temperature water on the table? I read that cold water actually tightens the throat. Sarah. There's room temperature water on the table. There has been room temperature water on the table since 7:30. Victoria. Oh, great. You're so thorough. You're so thorough. Said the way you'd compliment a very reliable appliance. Mark is already on his phone, pacing near the window. He glances over once at Sarah. Mark, did you handle the Caldwell amendment? Sarah signed, scanned, and sent at 8:15. Confirmation is in your inbox. Mark, the queue, 3 hard copies. Sarah, on your chair when you arrived, as I said. Mark, already looking away. Remind me to look at the Morrow site proposal tonight. Sarah, I'll send a 7 p.m. calendar block. He doesn't respond. He's already talking to Victoria about something else. Something she laughs at in a way that is a little too bright. a little too certain of its own effect. Sarah opens her portfolio. She writes one more note. Her handwriting is extremely neat. Diane Park finds Sarah in the small prep kitchen at 9:12, refilling a water pitcher with the exact room temperature calm of someone who has made peace with a great many things. Diane, low, urgent. He's putting Victoria in the chair next to his during the presentation. Sarah. I know, Diane. That's your chair, Sarah. You've sat there for every major investor meeting since 2019. Sarah. Chairs don't have names on them, Diane. Diane. The investors know you. Wells' team knows you. Half of what they trust about this company is you. Your face, your follow-through, your Sarah Diane. Beat. Sarah, is the CFO presentation segment clean? Diane, frustrated, but shifting. Yes. It's clean. Sarah. Then let's go present a $200 million opportunity. She picks up the water pitcher, walks back toward the boardroom. Diane watches her go with the expression of someone watching a slow-motion thing they cannot stop. The investors arrive at 9:28. Carter Wells leads them. 4 people behind him, all in the careful uniform of serious money. Understated watches, no logos, the kind of confidence that doesn't need to perform. Wells stops when he sees Sarah. Wells, Sarah Calloway, 10 years, and you still run the tightest pre-meeting setup I've seen in this industry. Sarah, warmly, genuinely. Carter, good to see you. Your packet is the one with the blue tab. I've flagged the meridian projections on page 11, because I think that's where you'll want to start the conversation. Wells, to the person beside him, impressed. This is what I mean. This right here. Mark appears at Wells's shoulder, hand extended, smile deployed. Mark Carter, welcome. Glad you could make the trip up. Wells Mark shakes his hand, glances back briefly at Sarah. You ready to show us something worth $200 million? Mark more than ready. They move toward the table. Mark steers Wells by the shoulder, subtly pulling him away from Sarah, inserting himself as the center of gravity. It is seamlessly done. He has had practice. The presentation begins at 9:44. Mark stands at the head of the table. Behind him, the first slide. Brennan Luxury Properties, the next decade. Below it, in smaller text, the company tagline. A tagline Sarah wrote in 2021 during a rebranding session that took 3 weeks and that Mark announced at a press conference as something we developed in-house. He is good in a room. This is true, and Sarah has never denied it. He has a voice that sounds like decisions and a jaw that looks like conviction. He knows how to make a room feel like it's being let in on something. Mark, gentlemen and ladies, thank you for being here. What you're going to see today isn't just a portfolio, it's a vision, a 10-year roadmap for what luxury real estate looks like when it's done with genuine architectural integrity and financial discipline. Wells and his team are leaning in, slightly. Enough. The slides advance. They are beautiful. Every transition, every data visualization, every carefully chosen aerial photograph, all of it shaped by Sarah over 18 months. Mark talks through them like he built them from scratch. Victoria's segment arrives at the 40-minute mark. She stands up with the ease of someone who has been coached on standing up and pulls the presentation forward to her first slide. A rebrand narrative that Sarah wrote the bones of in November, that Victoria has since dressed up with new fonts and her own name in the speaker notes. Victoria. What we recognized coming into this brand evolution was that the Brennan name carried legacy weight. But legacy alone doesn't convert high-net-worth millennials. So we developed an entirely new positioning strategy that speaks to values-led luxury. Conscious premium, if you will. I personally drove this direction after analyzing 18 months of competitor sentiment data. Sarah sits very still at the far end of the table. She does not look at her portfolio. She does not look at Holloway, who she can feel looking at her. She watches Victoria speak the words that came, originally, from Sarah's own notebooks, from late nights and early mornings, and a yellow legal pad she still has in her desk drawer. She keeps her face completely neutral. She's had a great deal of practice at that, too. Wells, to Victoria. This values-led positioning, where did the data framework come from? That segmentation model is unusually precise. Victoria, small hesitation. It was a collaborative process. Across the team. Wells, making a note. It's strong work. Whoever built it. Victoria smiles, moves to the next slide. Mark closes the main presentation at 11:20. Mark. What you've seen today is the product of years of disciplined leadership, strategic vision, and a team that I have built and cultivated with intention. We are not asking you for $200 million. We are inviting you to own a piece of something that will define the Manhattan skyline for the next generation. Quiet in the room. The good kind of quiet. The kind that means the money is thinking. Wells, I have to say, Mark, this is more cohesive than anything we saw 18 months ago. The narrative through line is significantly stronger. Mark, we've been refining. Wells, whatever you changed, it worked. Looking briefly down the table towards Sarah's direction. The operational detail in particular, the investor communication protocols, the project milestone transparency framework. That's rare in a firm this size. Usually you get the vision or the infrastructure. Not both. Mark, smoothly. It's about building the right culture. Down the table, Sarah writes something in her portfolio. She caps her pen. The break comes at 11:35. Coffee. The low murmur of money talking to itself. Holloway finds Sarah near the window. Holloway, very quietly. Are you going to let him take credit for all of it? Sarah. He's the CEO, Raymond. That's how it works. Holloway. That is not how it works, and you know it. Wells practically asked for you by name. Sarah. Wells doesn't need to know who built the slide deck. He needs to feel confident in the investment. If Mark presenting it gives him that confidence, then the presentation did its job. Holloway. And what about your job? What about your, Sarah? Quiet, level, final. Not today, Raymond. Please. Holloway looks at her for a long moment. Holloway. Harold left something for you, you know. Thomas called me. He said the estate is, he catches himself. You should call Thomas. After today. Sarah's eyes sharpen almost imperceptibly. Sarah, I know. I've been managing the timing. Holloway. Don't manage it too long. He moves away before she can answer. The meeting reconvenes at 11:52. This is the Q&A segment. This is Sarah's segment. Historically, the one where the investors ask the hard questions about operations, timelines, risk mitigation, and Sarah answers them with the calm authority of someone who actually built the systems being discussed. Except today, Mark has not called on her once. Wells, I want to revisit the Meridian Tower timeline. The original projection had groundbreaking in Q2 of next year. Is that still realistic given the permit situation in Lower Manhattan? Mark hesitates. Just a fraction. This is exactly the kind of question Sarah can answer in her sleep. She knows the permit situation. She's been managing the permit situation. She knows the names of the city contacts, the 3 alternative pathways, the contingency timeline she built in October when the original looked uncertain. She opens her mouth slightly. Mark, cutting in. We're confident in Q2. Our team has a handle on the regulatory pathway. Wells, can you be more specific? Because our urban development consultant flagged the 78B variance issue as potentially, Mark, it's being handled. Wells, measured, not satisfied. I'd like to understand the mechanism by which it's being handled, Mark. A beat. Mark looks for something to say. The room can feel it. The small seam in the armor. Sarah, calmly from her end of the table. The 78B variance application was filed November 3rd through a parallel track submission that coordinates with the Landmark Preservation Overlay Review. We've engaged directly with the Manhattan Community Board through a liaison process. I can give you the contact name if you want independent verification. We have 3 scenario timelines. A Q2 groundbreaking if the variance clears by February. A Q3 contingency with no material impact to the financing structure, and a restructured Phase 1 approach if we need to push to Q4. None of the 3 scenarios affects the projected 10-year return by more than 1.2%. Silence. Wells looks at Sarah, really looks at her. Wells, and you are? Sarah Calloway. I oversee operational strategy and investor relations management for Brennan Properties. Wells, to a colleague, under his breath, but audible. There she is, to Sarah. Send me the variance timeline breakdown after the meeting. That's exactly the kind of depth we need to see. Sarah, I'll have it in your inbox within the hour. Mark is looking at her from the head of the table. His expression is pleasant. His eyes are not. The meeting ends at 12:40. Handshakes. Business cards. The warm, professional noise of a successful morning. Wells stops at the door and turns back to Sarah specifically. Wells, you should be in every one of these meetings. Sarah, lightly. I am in every one of these meetings. Wells, with the small, knowing look. You know what I mean. He leaves. His team follows. The room begins to empty. Only. The core remains. Mark, Victoria, Holloway, Diane, and Sarah. Mark is at the head of the table, still. He's looking at his phone, but he is not reading anything on it. Sarah can tell. She has watched him perform busyness for years. Holloway, strong morning. Wells is close to yes, I think. If we follow up cleanly over the next 2 weeks. Mark, we'll follow up. I'll handle Wells personally. Holloway. Sarah should be in the loop. He clearly has a rapport with Mark. I said I'll handle it. A beat. Holloway says nothing. Mark puts his phone down. He looks up. He looks at the room the way someone looks at a room when they have decided something and have been waiting for the right moment to say it. Mark, actually, while we're all here, I have something I want to share. Victoria, at his right, straightens slightly. A small, prepared movement. Sarah watches this, files it. Mark. The last few months have involved a lot of personal reflection for me. Losing my father. Thinking about the future of this company. The future of my life. And I've come to some conclusions that I think you all should hear directly from me. Holloway, Mark. Mark first. Victoria and I are engaged. The silence that follows is the kind that has a shape, Diane makes a very small, very controlled sound. Holloway's expression doesn't change, but something behind his eyes goes cold and final. Sarah looks at Mark. She looks at him with the complete, unreadable composure of a woman who has already done her grieving in private and has nothing left to perform. Mark, looking at Sarah now, directly for the first time today. I know this is a lot. And I want to be straightforward, Sarah. Given the change in my personal situation and the direction I want to take this company, I think it's time we make some structural changes to the team. Sarah, Vinley, what kind of structural changes? Mark, I'm eliminating the Chief of Operations role. We're going to restructure that function under Victoria's oversight as part of the Brand and Strategy Division. Sarah, you're eliminating my role. Mark, the role, yes. I think you've done tremendous work here. Sarah, I built this company, Mark. Mark, a flash of something. Not guilt, something harder. You supported this company? There's a difference. You were very good at executing, but executing someone else's vision is not the same as building something. The room is absolutely still. Sarah, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Mark, I'm letting you go, Sarah. Effective today, you'll receive a standard severance package. Sarah, standard. Mark, 12 weeks. Sarah, 12 weeks. Mark. And a reference, of course. You'll have no trouble finding another position. You're competent. You're organized. Someone will be happy to have you. Competent. Organized. Someone will be happy to have you. Filed away, preserved, every word. Mark, and now he says the thing he has perhaps been building toward for longer than today. I think, honestly, you've maybe lost sight of what your role actually was here. This was always my company. My name on the door. My vision. You were support staff, Sarah. Very good support staff. But you were never going to be anything more than that. And I think somewhere along the way, you started to believe otherwise. And that's not fair to you. You should find somewhere you can be more than the person behind someone else's desk. You're nothing without my paycheck. That is the sentence living underneath every word he just said, and everyone in the room can hear it. Victoria is looking at her manicure. Diane has gone very still in the way of someone who is cataloging this moment for future reference. Holloway is looking at Mark with an expression that is no longer cold. It is something past cold. Something that has been cold so long it has come out the other side. Sarah stands up. She takes her leather portfolio. She straightens the one chair beside her that doesn't need straightening. She picks up her coffee, which is now cold, and holds it with the easy, unhurried posture of someone who is not in a hurry. She looks at Mark. She looks at him for a long time, long enough that he shifts, barely in his chair. Sarah. Thank you for clarifying my role. She turns and walks to the door. She does not slam it. She does not cry. She does not look at Victoria. She does not look back. She closes the door behind her with a soft, definitive click that is somehow louder than any slam could have been. The elevator opens. Sarah steps in. She watches the boardroom doors through the closing gap. She reaches into her portfolio. She takes out the note she's been writing to herself all morning. She reads it once. It says, "Call Thomas." She takes out her phone. Thomas Crane, attorney, 67, the kind of man whose suits are older than some law firms, opens his office door at 2:15 p.m. to find Sarah already seated across from his desk, composed as architecture. Thomas, I've been wondering when you'd come. Sarah, I've been managing the timing. Thomas, sitting. Raymond called me this morning. He was worried about you. Sarah, Raymond worries about everything. Thomas, Raymond is usually right. Pause. Harold changed his estate documents 14 months ago. He didn't tell Mark. He didn't tell anyone except me and his accountant. And he swore us both to silence until it became relevant. Sarah, why didn't you tell me when he died? Thomas, because Harold specifically asked me to wait. He said, and I am quoting him directly, "Let the boy show Sarah who he really is. She deserves to see it clearly before she has to decide what to do with it." Sarah closes her eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Sarah, he knew. Thomas, he's known for years. He watched Mark slowly take everything you built and put his name on it. He watched the marriage, carefully, evolve. He adored you, Sarah, not as a daughter-in-law, as the person he trusted most with everything he'd spent his life building. Sarah, what did he leave me, Thomas? Thomas opens a folder, slides it across the desk. Sarah looks down at the document. Her eyes move across the first page, then the second. She turns to the third. Her expression does not crack, but something in the room changes. The air pressure, almost. The quality of the silence. Sarah, reading, quiet. 51%. Thomas voting shares. Controlling interest. The original Brennan Holdings Trust, which predates the formation of Brennan Luxury Properties by 8 years, holds majority governance rights over the firm, regardless of subsequent corporate restructuring. Mark's 31% stake gives him operational authority, but not majority control. It never did. Harold retained that. And now you hold it. Sarah, he gave me the company. Thomas, he gave you what was always rightfully in your orbit. He said, "I want to read this to you," because he wrote it down. And I think he'd want you to hear it in his words. Thomas puts on his reading glasses, opens a handwritten letter. Thomas, reading. Sarah, if you're reading this, then Mark has finally done the thing I always feared he was capable of. I want you to know that I saw you. Every meeting you prepared, every crisis you managed, every year you gave to this company. Why, my son took the credit and called it leadership. You were the foundation. You were always the foundation. I'm sorry I didn't say it louder when I was alive. Consider this me saying it as loud as I can. The company is yours. Do with it what a person of character would do. I trust you. I always trusted you. Harold. Sarah sits with this for a long moment. She does not cry. Or perhaps she does, very slightly. A single controlled moment of something. And then it passes, and she is herself again. Sarah, what do I need to do? Thomas, sign here, here, and here. I'll file the transfer of chairmanship with the corporate registry tonight. By tomorrow morning, you are legally, on paper, and in every room that matters, the chairman of the board and majority shareholder of Brennan Luxury Properties. Sarah picks up the pen. She signs. Her handwriting is, as always, extremely neat. Sarah sits in her car outside the office building at 6:44 p.m. She has not gone back inside. She doesn't need to, not tonight. She looks up at the 37th floor. The lights are still on. She can see, very faintly, the silhouette of movement up there. The shape of a man who believes he has just cleaned house. Her phone rings. It's Diane. Sarah Diane. Diane. Raw, furious, barely contained. Please tell me you're not just going to disappear. Please tell me today is not the end of this. Sarah, today is not the end of anything. Diane, pause. What does that mean? Sarah, it means I'll see you tomorrow morning. 8 o'clock, the boardroom. Diane. Sarah? Sarah. Good night, Diane. She hangs up. She sits in the quiet of the car for another minute. Then she starts the engine and drives home. 7:58 a.m. The following morning. The elevator opens on the 37th floor. Sarah Calloway Brennan steps out. She is dressed differently today. Not in the careful, professional, but understated palette of a woman making herself manageable. Today she wears the kind of clothes that take up space on purpose. Structured. Deliberate. The posture of someone who has stopped making herself smaller. She carries nothing except a single folder and her phone. The receptionist, young, 2 months into the job, used to seeing Sarah arrive before anyone and leave after everyone. Looks up. Receptionist. Good morning, Ms. Calloway. I'm sorry, Ms. Brennan. I wasn't sure if… Sarah. Good morning, Jesse. Is Mr. Holloway in? Receptionist. Yes, he's been here since 7. He said he was expecting. Sarah, thank you. She walks through the main floor. People look up. They've heard about yesterday. Of course they have. Offices like this don't keep secrets. They only delay them. She can feel the looking. She doesn't perform for it. Diane is waiting outside the boardroom, arms crossed, eyes bright with something between fury and hope. Diane Thomas called me last night. Sarah, I asked him to. Diane, looking at her, really looking. You're the majority shareholder. Sarah. Yes. Diane Harold. Sarah. Yes. Diane. A long exhale. Relief, rage, grief, all of it. That man. That beautiful, impossible man. Sarah. I know. Diane. What do you need from me? Sarah. I need the last 18 months of operating expenditures broken down by authorization signature. I need the executive compensation revisions that were made in January. And I need the full register of Victoria Chase's employment contract and her defined scope of authority. Diane, already moving. Give me 20 minutes. Sarah, you have 15. Diane almost smiles. Goes. Holloway is in the boardroom when Sarah enters. He's standing at the window, the way older men stand when they've been waiting with something important. He turns, looks at her. Holloway. So it's done. Sarah, it's done. Holloway, something unlocking in his face. He told me, Harold, about 8 months ago. He sat me down and he said, Raymond, I want you to know what's coming so that when it happens, you can be steady for her. He said you'd need a steady room. Sarah, I don't need… Holloway. A steady room, Sarah. Not someone to hold you up. Just a room that isn't against you. Beat. Sarah. Were you steady? Yesterday. Holloway. I was steady enough to not flip the table, which I'll tell you was a near thing. She almost laughs. A real one. Small, but real. Sarah. Here's what's going to happen today, Raymond. I am going to call a board meeting. Emergency session, which as chairman I am authorized to do unilaterally under the corporate governance charter. All board members and the executive team are required to attend. Mark will be notified with 1 hour's notice, as per charter rules. Holloway 1 hour. Sarah. 1 hour is sufficient. Holloway, slowly. And when he walks in, Sarah. When he walks in, he'll find out for the first time who actually owns the keys to this building. Holloway looks at her for a long time. There is something in his eyes. Not pity, not even admiration exactly. Something older than both of those things. Recognition. Holloway. Your father-in-law was a wise man. Sarah, he was. Pause. Sarah, he also knew his son. Mark receives it in his office at 9:03 a.m., while Victoria is sitting across from him, reviewing the Wells follow-up strategy. He reads it twice. Mark, very still. What is this? Victoria. What? Mark, to himself, reading the name again. Chairman of the board. He picks up his phone. Calls Thomas Crane's office. No answer. Calls his own attorney. Gets voicemail. Calls Holloway. Holloway, answering even. Mark. Mark. What is going on? I just received a board meeting notice from Sarah. Holloway. I'd suggest you attend. 1 hour, Mark. Holloway hangs up. Mark stares at the phone. Victoria is watching him. Victoria. Mark. Mark, standing, something cold moving across his face. She doesn't have the authority to call a board meeting. She's not on the board. She was fired yesterday. Victoria. Then why does the notice say chairman of the… Mark, cutting her off, already moving. Because something has gone very wrong, and I need to find out what. 10 a.m. The boardroom is full. Every board member. Diane Park. 2 members of the legal team. Holloway at Sarah's right. The air in the room is the specific kind of charged that precedes things that cannot be undone. At the head of the table, the head, the actual head, Mark's habitual seat, sits Sarah Calloway Brennan. She is very still. In front of her, the single folder, a glass of water, nothing else. Mark walks in at 10:02. He sees her at the head of the table. He stops walking for a moment. Just a moment. He recovers quickly. He's good at recovering quickly. And takes a seat midway down the table, because every other seat is occupied. And there is no seat at the head, because the head has someone in it. Mark, controlled, the way a man is controlled when he is not in control. Sarah, I'm not sure what this is, but I think we should… Sarah, thank you all for coming on short notice. I'll be brief because the matter at hand is straightforward. She opens the folder, does not look at it. She has had it memorized since 2:15 p.m. yesterday. 14 months ago, Harold Brennan amended his estate documents to transfer his 51% controlling interest in Brennan Holdings, the parent trust of this firm, to me, effective upon his death. Harold passed away 3 weeks ago. The transfer is fully executed, filed, and registered as of last night. As of this morning, I am the majority shareholder and chairman of the board of Brennan Luxury Properties. Not silence. Something underneath silence. Something that precedes it. Mark, very controlled. That's not possible. My father would have… Sarah. Your father did. Thomas Crane has been Harold's attorney for 30 years. The documents are in order. Raymond has reviewed them. Diane has been briefed on the financial implications. Your own legal team will verify everything in this folder within the hour if they haven't started already. Mark, leaning forward. Sarah. Sarah. My name in this room is Chairman Calloway Brennan. The room holds very still. Mark looks at her. For the first time in perhaps years, he is actually looking at her. Not through her, not past her, not at the version of her he decided she was. At her, at what she actually is. He does not like what he sees, not because it is threatening, because it is true. Mark, quieter now. You went to Thomas behind my back. Sarah, your father left me a letter and a legal document. I went to collect them. That's not behind your back, Mark. That's just what happens when someone acts. Beat. Sarah, I want to address the board directly on 2 items of business. The first is the matter of corporate governance going forward. The second is the matter of executive leadership. She looks around the table. Each person. She does not rush. Sarah. This company was founded on a set of principles that Harold Brennan articulated and that I spent 10 years operationalizing. Transparency, architectural integrity, investor trust, long-term value over short-term performance. Those principles are not negotiable. They are, in fact, the reason Carter Wells and his consortium are currently considering a $200 million commitment to this firm. They are also the reason that commitment is at risk. She slides a document to the center of the table. Sarah, this is a summary of executive decisions made in the last 18 months that represent material deviations from those principles. Unauthorized expense allocations totaling $900,000. A marketing services contract. She does not look at Victoria. Awarded without competitive bidding or board approval at a rate 40% above market. And a pattern of investor communication that has systematically obscured operational risk, including the 78B variant situation that almost collapsed the Wells presentation yesterday. Diane, from her corner, is watching Mark. She has the expression of someone who prepared for this. Mark, standing. You don't have the authority to... Sarah. I have the majority of voting shares and the chairmanship. I have more authority in this room than anyone here. Please sit down, Mark. He does not sit, but he does not speak. Sarah. As chairman, I am exercising my authority to relieve Mark Brennan of his position as CEO of Brennan Luxury Properties, effective immediately. The board will appoint an interim CEO within 30 days. Mark will retain his 31% equity stake. He will not retain executive authority, signatory rights, or any operational role in the company. Mark, voice dropping to something dangerous. You can't do this. This is my company. My name is on the... Sarah. Your name is on the door. Pause. I own the building. Mark, something breaking open in him now. After everything I gave you, everything you had because of me. Sarah. You gave me 12 weeks severance and told me I was nothing without your paycheck. Beat. I've been nothing without your paycheck for about 19 hours. I think I'm managing. The room makes a small, involuntary sound. Not laughter. Something adjacent to it. Mark, looking around at the table. Are you all going to sit there and... Holloway. Measured. Final. Mark. Your father built something real here. And then he watched what happened to it. He made a decision. I think, speaking only for myself, that it was the right one. Mark looks at Holloway. Something in that look that is older than today. Something going back to board meetings and dinners and years of Raymond Holloway, watching and saying nothing and waiting. Holloway holds his gaze, doesn't move. Mark looks at the table, at the faces, at the documents, at the math of the situation, which has exactly one answer, and which he cannot change. He looks, last, at Sarah. Sarah meets his eyes. She does not look victorious. She does not look vindicated. She looks like what she has always been, and what he never saw. The most prepared person in the room. Sarah, quieter now, just to him. You told me yesterday that executing someone else's vision isn't the same as building something. You were right. I wasn't executing your vision, Mark. I was building mine. I was just being patient about whose name went on it. Mark says nothing. He picks up his phone. He straightens his jacket. He walks to the door with the stiff dignity of a man who has not yet learned that dignity is something you carry in, not something you manufacture on the way out. He pauses at the door. Mark, without turning. You'll run this company into the ground. Sarah, looking at the folder, already moving forward. I'll send you the quarterly reports. The door closes. Victoria Chase is still at the table. She is looking at her hands. Sarah Victoria. Victoria looks up. She is younger than she seemed yesterday. Without Mark in the room to perform for, there is something more honest in her face. Sarah, your marketing contract will be reviewed. If your work holds up at market rate, you may be invited to reapply through our standard vendor process. Victoria, quietly. I wasn't just the marketing director. Sarah, I know what you were, not unkindly. That's not something I'm going to make into a performance here. You can stay for the rest of the meeting, or you can go. That's your choice. Victoria stands. She gathers her things. She pauses. Victoria, the rebrand strategy, the values-led positioning, was it really yours? Sarah, yes. Victoria, a beat, something honest in it. It's good work. Sarah, I know. Victoria leaves. The room exhales. Holloway looks at Sarah. Diane looks at Sarah. The board members, some of them new to this particular drama, some of them old enough to have seen versions of it before, look at Sarah. Sarah, all right, let's talk about the Wells follow-up. Pause. Sarah, I want that $200 million, and I want it before the end of the month. So let's get to work. 3 weeks later, the 37th floor, 7:14 a.m. Sarah moves through the office in the early morning light. The skyline outside is the same. The marble floors are the same. The framed architectural renderings, some of which she will quietly replace with new ones, are the same. But the office has a different quality now. Not louder, not harder, just more honest. Like a room that has been allowed to be what it actually is. She stops at the head of the long mahogany conference table. She sets down her coffee. She sets down her portfolio. She opens her laptop. Her email loads. At the top, Carter Wells. Hartwell Capital Commitment. Sarah, we're in. Full amount. Conditions as discussed. I'll say this. It's good to know who's actually running things. Looking forward to working with you properly. CW. She reads it once, then again. She closes the laptop, sits in the quiet for a moment, looks at the skyline. Then she takes out her portfolio and writes one thing at the top of a fresh page. Day 1. She caps her pen, picks up her coffee, and goes to work. Fade out. Never underestimate the person who helped you build your empire. True power isn't the title on your door. It's who actually owns the keys to the kingdom.